Hello, good evening, everyone. Daniel Wagner here on a beautiful evening, and I'm very happy, very proud to have a good friend of mine with me tonight, Mr. Paul Avins. Paul, are you there? Can you hear me?
I am indeed, Daniel, yes. Great to be
Excellent.
here, very exciting, yes. I
Oh my
managed to
God.
escape the Transformers of JJ land to get out to be here tonight. So I
Oh
was life
wow.
and death whether I'd make it at some point. They nearly had me
Oh,
surrounded, but we're here now, so it's all good.
that means you made a real sacrifice because playing with your son, I know how important it is for you, and giving
It
up an
is.
evening. So I really, really appreciate it, Paul. That's
You're
awesome.
welcome, my pleasure.
So, just a little bit before we get right into the story of Paul and why he is here with us tonight. Paul and I know each other for quite a few years and recently had a lot more to do with each other. And it all happened when I went to a debriefing event after the incredible National Achievers Congress. And I unfortunately couldn't make the Congress. Heard from many of my friends there was some great stories and some great breakthroughs. And Paul, together with Simon, have actually put together a debrief event which just gave me the 30,000-foot view, and I was so impressed with what Paul put together. We started working together more closely, and within a few weeks, I was co-authoring one of his books, which you can see on the screen on the left. And we've been to an amazing event with Paul as his Wealth Club, which is an incredible business building event. And from there on, I ended up spending my Saturday in London with Michael Lozier from the Law of Attraction, and boom, boom, boom. It's just happening, happening, happening. And Paul also agreed to speak at my upcoming event next Saturday, Sunday in London, the UK Infomillionaire. And actually tonight, we're seeing a preview of a piece of content that Paul has so far never shared in the UK. And I'm very excited. It's the first preview I see of what he will reveal in full at the upcoming info conference. So really excited stuff. For all the people on the call, I can see we had over 400 registration for this call, which is amazing. Which means
Yeah, it is.
the topic that Paul has outlined, or the headlines that we sent you and the emails we sent you have really struck a chord, and that's really, really great. So let me first of all say to everyone here on the call tonight, if you can hear me well, I hope so. I've been babbling on for 3 minutes already, so if you can hear me, just use the question box and just let me hear or type a clear yes, so I know that you can hear me well, because I'm going to hand over to Paul. Okay, lots of yeses coming in from Dalvir, Richard,
Awesome
Diane.
stuff.
Good stuff. Wow. This is like suddenly 50, 60 names popping in. Ben, Chris, Mike, Ivor, hello to everyone. Good evening, Steve, Simon. Awesome, awesome stuff. Paul, do you want to say a few things? And you guys let me know if you can hear Paul as well. We
Yeah,
have
sure.
8 on. Well, 8, good evening, 8. 8 in stone,
Yeah.
loud and clear, he says. That's excellent.
Fantastic. Well, I think for me, it's just to really appreciate people taking time out of their lives to invest it in an hour. And for me, time's the greatest resource. We don't get it back. So I take this really seriously, and I want to deliver massive value to everybody on this call. I'm going to share some of the things I've been asked to teach, and up until now, we've only actually taught to my mentors within the Business Wealth Club. So some kind of behind the scenes, pull back the curtain stuff, because I think right now it's absolutely critical. There are some major trends happening around the world that are converging to make the opportunity for entrepreneurs, small business people, consultants, coaches, information marketers huge right now. And those trends are with us, and I think those trends are driving people to this call because there is a hunger for information right now, but there is a hunger for trust more than information, because frankly information is everywhere, trust is not. So I think a large amount of this is about how do we identify the people we can trust, and that's what positioning yourself as an expert does. It rapidly accelerates the level of trust you have with your market. So yeah,
No,
looking forward to sharing some stuff I've used.
I couldn't agree more, Paul. Especially in times of uncertainty, and there's no doubt we're all positive thinkers, but there's no doubt that the world and the economy of the world is in turmoil in many areas, and people are looking for safety. They're looking for certainty, and an expert, somebody they can trust, is indeed delivering the certainty people are looking for. So I want to start a webinar right now. We have many people, and a few questions just came through. One guy said, "Oh my God, when did you start? Did I miss something?" Yeah, you missed a few lame jokes of myself when we get started, and Paul and I just outline what we're going to cover today. But now is the official start of the webinar. I'm going to hand over to Paul. I will be because I find it quite hard just to listen. So I will be at times maybe ask a clarifying question to Paul or chip in a sentence or two. But I want to hand over to Paul, and I got my notepad ready. So everyone out there, I give you 30 more seconds to actually grab a piece of paper and grab a sharp pencil to take some cool notes, because we're going to rock and roll. We're going to right now get into expert mode, and Paul will reveal some of the major components of the instant expert formula. Take it away, Paul. I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm quite happy for you to jump in, and it would be, frankly, unusual for you to remain silent for too long. So this is about having fun as much as anything. So I appreciate there's about 100 or so people on the call who know me, but there are an awful lot of people who don't know me or haven't necessarily seen me. And what I wanted to do tonight was just to outline a little bit of my story in about 2 or 3 minutes, but I also wanted to explain why I think this is such an important message to share, and for me, why learning the strategies about positioning myself as an expert have literally changed everything in my business. And when I say changed everything in my business, you know, I'll really delve in and explain specifically what some of those strategies have resulted in terms of income for my business or for me personally. Not to impress anybody necessarily. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to show people what is possible. Because my fundamental belief is if I can do it, you can do it. Because trust me, when you hear some of my story, you know, I've had more setbacks and rejections and people tell me I can't do stuff than I've ever had people tell me I can. And I think I said to Daniel in one of our recent conversations, if there's one thing I would say to everybody above all else is if you're going to do one thing in your life, it's back yourself. Because fundamentally, backing yourself is going to lead to success. So whatever you choose to do with this information tonight, and I hope you choose to take some, you know, real action, and perhaps even come and spend the weekend with us, and I could share some more with you. But whatever you do, commit right now at the beginning of this call to take action to do something with this information, because results only happen as, you know, when action is applied. So let's just get stuck in if we can. So for those who haven't really met me before, kind of my expert story, if you like, is kind of interesting. Often people think you have to be academically brilliant to become an expert. Well, I'm about to disprove that myth right now. In fact, you know, I wasn't really diagnosed as dyslexic till I was 14. Struggled academically. I can vividly remember one year celebrating the fact that I came 18th in a class of 20 because it was the highest I'd ever got in the school to date. And school just never really worked for me. You know, managed to, you know, get through somehow with 3 A levels and drag myself into university, and really had a life-changing experience there. And I was giving, you know, particularly, I think it was a marketing assignment, if I remember correctly, and I'd filled in, you know, this I suppose, report, if you like, brief, can't even remember what it was, and they went through the entire room, handing out A's, B's, C's, D's, E's, and mine was left. Mine was the last one to be handed out. And you know, I like to think I'm a fairly positive guy. I mean, at 5'4", I spent most of my school life playing in goal, so you have to be an optimist. And you know, what happened was life changing for me. And quite often, I think in life, you know, I'm sure Daniel, you'd agree with me in this, we have moments that we do not realize their significance until we look back on them. And you know, there's a great sort of quote that says, you know, we live life forwards and understand it backwards. And you know, for me, I think sometimes we don't realize those pivotal moments until years later, or those pivotal decisions. Anyway, back to the story. So I get called to the front of the class, and the teacher, whose name I can't even remember, which shows you, isn't it, the impact people can have on you, proceeds to tell me how I have no right to be on the course, and I'll never be successful in business because I misspelt business throughout the entire essay that I was handing in. And you know, it sort of struck me at that moment in time. I thought I have two choices. One, I can buy into his limiting belief about me and what's possible in my life, and bear in mind at that time I'm 19, and I thought, well, I've got quite a lot of my life left to live. Or I can choose to go out and back myself. And you know, I chose to back myself, and at that point, walked straight out of the university, and thought, if that's the most motivational lesson I'm going to get, I'm going to go out in the real world and see what the real world's like, because frankly, this isn't really helping me. And I'm a big believer in education, but not that kind of education. So left, never went back and finished it. and went on to start, 5 businesses over the course of about the next 7 years, bounced around from business to business, some of which were successful. I built £1 million plus business with my father operating from home, which was, great, very exciting. And then we went on to get some corporate sales jobs where I became top salesperson. But it wasn't really until I discovered kind of personal development and education, so sort of self-education, if you like, that really things started to change for me. And I remember going to a seminar with Jay Abraham and Peter Thompson down in London, Heathrow, and I think at the time it was about £6,000 to go, a lot of money, and I turned up. At the time it was a lot of money. Turned up and sat on a table next to 2 other guys I'd never met before. And by the end of the weekend, it was a 4-day weekend. By the end of the weekend event, we decided to go into business together, and I became the sales and marketing director for a brand new startup company. And I'm often reminded, people say to me, how do you get great joint ventures? How do you meet with people? How do you, where do the next life-changing relationships come from? And my answer is always at seminars, without shadow of a doubt. At seminars, at networking events, that without shadow of a doubt, that's where you meet like-minded people, because you've got to get in that kind of environment. So, for me, I've been a committed learner ever since. One of the things I've really run my life by, and I think if you want to be an expert, this is true, you have to commit to mastery. That for me is commit to mastering your subject. And so here's a quick question for everyone on the call. Be honest with yourself. In the last 3 months, how many books have you read on your particular subject? How many seminars have you attended? How many courses have you taken? This year, how much have you actually invested back in educating yourself so that you can go and educate your customers, your clients, and people you want to work with? Because unless you're committed to that, and I know a number of people on this call are absolutely committed to it, or they wouldn't be on this call. The reality is, the minute as an expert, our value. See, here's a lesson that took me a while to learn. The minute that our clients catch up with us and know what we know, we are unable to deliver value to them, and you can pretty much plot the timeline between that point and the time at which they leave you as an expert. So, I think first key strategy to being an expert is to commit to never-ending growth, right? To never stop learning.
Paul, okay, can I ask you a clarifying question on that one? We all have our own kind of numbers or ideas, but is there a certain amount of the money you make, you invest back into your education?
Yeah, great question.
A certain amount of time you spend every week or every morning? Have you got a ritual on doing that? Because we all have so much to do, but how can you make sure you always find time?
Okay, well, firstly, I think finding time is about committing to time rather than finding it. Okay, because the reality is, if you're trying to find it, it's pretty busy. We're all busy, but you have to commit to it. So for me, here's some stuff that served me very well, or a couple of strategies that have served me very well since I was probably back, 22, 23. One is turn your car into a university. And I learned that from Brian Tracy many years ago. So, if you're in a car and it's essentially dead time, make sure you've got, your MP3, your iPod, your CDs, and you're listening to educational material as you're driving around. Most of us in business spend 2-3 hours a day in a car. That's 2 or 3 hours you can be growing your mind and your knowledge when you're not doing anything else anyway. So you suddenly turn that unproductive time into massively productive and profitable time. That's one thing. The other thing I would do is, I've often said readers are leaders and leaders are readers. And there is a piece of research that was done a while back that said, the top CEOs of American companies read between 20 and 25 non-fiction books a year. And yet they earn, on average, anywhere between $500,000 to $500,000 upwards, when the average salary in America is, somewhere around the, $25,000 to $30,000. So they earn, massively more because they know massively more. And ultimately, we get paid for our ability to solve problems with people. Well, guess what? The more we know, the more problems we can solve for people. I think as a rule of thumb, Daniel, if I can, a rule of thumb, and I was taught this, again, when I was about 19 or 20. Somebody once said to me, take 10% of everything you earn and invest it back in training yourself.
Wow. So as you make more money, you get more expensive training courses to buy, correct?
Yeah. But it actually this is where it gets interesting, because this is why people like you and I seek out, I fly to America to spend time with one of my mentors, and now that's not just an investment financially to fly on a plane, but it's also, it's a $35,000, investment in terms of mentoring for me. But, it's a question of keeping moving up to find the next level of knowledge and skill. We have to seek out those people. But you know what? Sometimes, and I've been, listen, I've been rich and I've been, I've made money and I've been broke. And I can tell you right now, there are times when I was broke, it was a challenge to buy a £10 book. Real challenge. So wherever you are right now, it doesn't matter. The point is, commit to that as a mantra for living your life, right? That just 10% of whatever you make every month, you're going to put back into training you. The payoff over time is huge.
It's an absolute gold nugget you're sharing here, and I mean, if you look at your life, I look at my life and business story, and many of the listeners out there, it's the amount of time you commit to learning new stuff, because the knowledge you have is truly, you said that, actually I think it was even you who told me that years ago. I think you told me the business is solving problems at a premium. So when you make money, all you do is solve more problems for more people, and obviously the more you know, the easier it is to solve those problems. And the money is
that's a really interesting point, actually, because a lot of people who are in the expert space or want to come into the expert space, and I know I did it when I started out, get trapped with thinking that we're selling our time, where in reality what we're selling is our experience. So, I remember somebody once, quizzing me when I started out as a business coach, and he said to me, "How long have you been business coaching?" And I said, 2 years. And he said, "Well, I've been running my business 20 years, 22 years, something like that." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "What can you teach me?" And I said, "Well, first of all, with that attitude, nothing."
That's true. It's an interesting one in itself, isn't it? If somebody's close-minded, there's nothing you can show anyone.
No. Secondly, I said to him, "Here's the thing." I said, "You've been running the same business for 22 years. I said, "So you've got 22 years worth of experience pretty much repeated." I said, "I've spent the last 2 years coaching on average 15 business owners a week. So that's 15 different businesses I've been working in for 52 weeks a year." I said, "How much? Where are we rating experience?" I said, "It's not how are you measuring it?" So it's just interesting. Anyway, can I jump back to a couple of things, if I may? Is that all right?
Yeah, I mean, are you going to you will bring us up to date, but just right now, I'm looking at your picture. You say when you were 19, when you were 22. You look like you're 23 on the picture. So, I mean,
well, it's just brilliant moisturizer, mate. I mean, I really invest in moisturizer. Apart from learning, it's the only other thing I spend money on, clearly. But but in all actually, funny enough, can I just take a bit of a deviation here, because I think there's a really important point, actually. And this is an interesting learning I've had pulling together the book, The Wealth Accelerators, which you're in. And you don't fall into this category, but it was interesting how many did. When I would ask experts who were contributing a chapter to this book, two things they didn't all have to hand instantly, which I thought was really interesting. And here's the first. Most of them did not have to hand a high quality range of photographs that we could select from for the book, right? They just didn't have it. In fact, in some cases, some of the people in the book didn't have a single print quality, professionally shot photograph. Now, I'm going to suggest that if you're an expert, that's something it should be in there in the toolkit as an absolute gift, shouldn't it? You should have a range of, I know you've got some, some informal, some formal, some different ones like that. And I believe in keeping them up to date, to be fair. I do believe in keeping them up to date. I hate going to seminars where you see a picture of somebody and you think, "Oh, wow, great." And then they walk out and, you think, "Who's that?" And it was them 22 years ago. We've all seen it, right? But I think it's really important. And the second one is to have a bio that really talks about your level of expertise. And, one of the things we're very bad at in this country, in the United Kingdom, in particular, is we don't like to feel like we are boasting or, quote, bragging about, our achievements. In fact, we almost play them down. In fact, I remember speaking to a friend of mine, a client, in fact, he's gone to America, and he said the hardest thing in the first year was that the Americans, would say, "What have you done?" And he'd say, "I've done this, 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 and this, but it's nothing really." And they'd say, "Oh, right, okay, well, if it's nothing, then we won't pay attention to it." And they took him at his word. And he said the hardest thing he had to do in the first year was get over his reserve about being British and not telling people what he'd actually achieved. And I think, do you know what, as an expert, if we've done it, and we've done it honestly and ethically, and we've helped people and added value, do you know what? You deserve the credit. You deserve to stand up and shout about, "Do you know what? I've done this by helping other people." Because if we're not going to shout about what we've done for other clients, we're not going to say, "Listen, if I've helped you, I can help you." What are we going to do? Anyway, so that's just a minor deviation, but I thought it was really important because I was genuinely surprised by the lack of professional photographs that a number of people in the book had, and secondly, the lack of available bios that they had. So, they would send us a bio, and I would say, and I'd ring some of them up because obviously I know them all very well, and I would say, well, you don't mention this and this and this in it. Oh, I didn't want to put that in. I thought I'd be
Wow.
bragging, and I'm like, why wouldn't you want to say that? Because you did it. So
Especially in a
anyway,
book where it's about expertise.
yeah,
So,
I
so
know,
I
but
I mean, already with just a few minutes in the call, and you shared some real nuggets here. The 10% investing of whatever you earn back in your education, even if you start with a £10 book. If you
yep,
want to be an expert, make sure you've got a photograph that is professional, represents the space you're working in, and have a bio that lists all your achievements in the best possible light, because that's what you want people to know, correct?
correct, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, awesome.
So
So carry on with your story, because I'm really intrigued what happened after uni and after the businesses you built.
yeah, so I said I went to this seminar, and I met a couple of other guys, and we started a company, and we raised £5 million worth of venture capital funding. And basically, we took that company from startup to 15 million turnover in 18 months, and
Wow,
promptly
wow, wow,
sold.
wow. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry. This is a classic example of you just throw in a couple of sentences. You raised how much joint venture finance?
we raised 5 million.
Five
That was
million.
back
I
when
mean,
raising 5 million was a lot easier, by the way. But it was 5 million.
that's
We
still
raised
a lot of
5 million.
money. I mean, I wouldn't know where to start, so that's to me is pretty impressive. But then you actually grew that company to 15 million turnover in what time period again?
18 months. It wasn't all me. There
Wow.
was a team of people who did that. I was part of the
Uh-huh,
team.
uh-huh.
But 18 months, and by the time we'd finished, there were 486 employees, I think. So
Bloody
yeah, it
hell.
was a pretty sizable company. Um,
Wow.
and I tell you what, we learned. We learned a number of expert lessons here, and I'll share them actually. Now, I've not shared these before. Firstly, it made a great deal of difference how the salespeople dressed to their conversion rate.
Wow.
Okay, so they were domestic security advisors. That's what we called them. All right, so they would go into people's homes and advise on potential threats to theft, with the view that they would sell them a burglar alarm.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, they would sell them a burglar alarm at about twice the price of everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we positioned it was that they were professionally trained, which they were, um, but they also looked the part. So when they went in, they were properly kitted out like an expert. So they had all the equipment they would need. Had all the reports they would need. They had checklists for the house that they were going. So the doors, the locks, the windows. They had a checklist, and they would give that report at the end of the visit. And all of that, thinking back on it now, really, wasn't it was done to make them stand out, to be different and perceived as an expert advisor. Because
Mm.
once you shift it in your mind to becoming an expert advisor, then people they give you more time, they give you more attention, and ultimately they'll give you more money. So,
Wow.
key
That
thing
is
that we did with
that is
that
amazing.
business.
Mm. Mm. I mean, back then it was more planned like a marketing strategy, but now looking back, it is the perfect example of expert positioning in a market that was crowded, that had
Mm.
low margins, and you just went in and totally literally blew everybody away. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of other things I'll allude to another time, but certainly that whole you felt like you were being cared for, and there's a really important point here that I would like to share just from my philosophy as around selling, which is, firstly, you've got to come from a place of integrity, goes without saying. Secondly, when customers realize that you care more about them, their business, their life, their property, their home, than you do about making the sale, that's when you make a lot of sales. Because when you become genuinely interested in the outcome of the people you serve, that's when you make a lot of money.
Mm.
Okay? And it's a really important distinction, because here's a funny thing I've noticed over the years of working with over 153 individual business owners and their teams. It's really interesting. The salespeople who sell the most are the ones who don't need the money the most, because they're so relaxed, because they're interested in helping, not worried about selling. The
Mm.
salespeople who go in and they look desperate for the sale, and we've all met them, they can't make a sale even if they were giving it away.
Mm. I would agree, because obviously the desperation comes across and creates massive sales resistance in the prospect.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
yeah, because there's no trust at this moment, isn't it? When you feel that they want to push something. Um,
Exactly.
mm.
Okay, so is it all right if I move on a bit, because I want to
Yeah,
get to
yeah, no,
teaching
definitely,
some of the
definitely.
strategies? Is that okay? But hopefully this is valuable for everybody. If they can kind of post in yes or no, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Um,
actually, let's have a quick statement here, and so let me know if what Paul's sharing so far, you had some value already. I definitely taken already half a page of notes. So let's see. Oh yeah, yes, 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 yes.
Cool.
Some great feedback. Very good.
Good.
Yeah, some great feedback. So actually, a very longer one says you come across someone who really cares about your customers. So that is great. You know, it's even
Thank you.
over the webinar, over the internet channels, people can spot sincerity, which is great. So awesome. Let's carry on. Brilliant.
Cool. All right. So having built that business up, sold out of that business, didn't know what to do, took the money and did, classic mistake, which was went and stuck all my money into a business I didn't know, didn't understand, hadn't learned from the ground up, and stuck it into .coms years ago. And within the space of 18 months, went from being, fairly, what I would call fairly financially successful at the age of 28 to being broke, moving back in with my parents and getting divorced at the age of 30. So, for me, that was a real kind of life-altering moment. And I think the thing that shook me out of my, pity party, so anyone else who's on the call, I had a pity party at that time. I blamed everybody else and all this kind of stuff. I had this long list of people who I used to blame. And I remember listening to a tape by the late Jim Rohn, and Jim Rohn saying, if you've got a blame list and you're not on it, you're not taking responsibility. And I remember going, yes, thanks for that.
He's right again. Good old Jim.
Yeah, Jim Rohn's right again. Yeah. And I just made me stop and think. And around the same time, my father came in and uttered the immortal lines of "Your mother and I have been talking," which never ends well, really. I don't know anyone else on the call, but it never ends well if it starts like that, or at least it didn't in my house. And my father promptly went on to say, I'm now charging you rent from next month. Get out, get going, do something, get off your backside, but no more lounging around doing nothing. And I think that's the best thing that could happen to me. I think for me, sometimes, we all need a good coach, and we all need someone to kick us in the backside and tell us what we should be doing, and get off and stop, whinging about it. Stuff's going to go wrong. Even if you position yourself as an expert, things are still not going to work out right all the time. It's not the silver bullet answer to everything. It is an answer to a lot of things, but it isn't the answer to everything. So, the reality is, it's all about that expert mindset. Energy. It's about energy. It's about focus, and it's about discipline. Because they're the things, the experts that I've learned from over the years. They have an incredible appetite to consume content, to learn, and a hunger to learn. And I'll be sat at the back of the room at the weekend, and you can count on the fact I'll be taking pages of notes from the other speakers, because I'm hungry to get that one or two pieces of distinction that are going to shift me and my clients to the next level. It just takes one good idea to move you forward. Anyway, so financially, kind of got back up on my feet, started bought a franchise, a cleaning business, built it up in about 18 months to which I could financially pay off my debts, moved out to Oxfordshire, got married to the wonderful Sue, who I've been married to now for over 7 years, which is just wonderful. And, we've got a family out here with JJ, he's now 5, my son, it's just brilliant. And decided, frankly, I didn't know what to do with my life, so I went to a franchise show and decided to become a business coach, because I thought I want to help people, I want to give back. I was inspired by the late great Sir John Harvey Jones, for those of us on the call that remember him, the troubleshooter. And I remember thinking, oh great, I could do that, and then seeing the franchise from which is now known as Action Coach for sale. And I thought, well, I'll buy that, I'll do that and become an expert in my area, my local community. And here's the interesting thing. I moved as part of, my life change, if you like. I moved out from London, where I'd spent, all my life. So I moved to Oxford. And when I moved to Oxford, I didn't know anybody. So I literally had no network to tap into. I had no business contacts at all. I had myself and Sue. We had a half-empty house with sleeping on mattresses and all that sort of stuff, and this desire to go out and make a difference and a change, and had to start right at the very base. I had to start at the bottom, and I did one thing which I'll share on here, and I wasn't planning on sharing this, but I just feel, is that okay with you? I'm going to share something I wasn't planning. Is that all right?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Okay, so I didn't have a lot of money to do marketing budget, but I had some. So I decided, I read a book, actually, called Selling the Invisible by a guy called Harry Beckworth. It's well worth getting. It's called Selling the Invisible. And in this book, which is all about how to sell consultancy services and things like that, he talks about a company that he had worked with, one in the same industry, right? One of which they were in the telecoms industry, doing outsourced call centers. This was a while back, right? One of them had taken out full-page glossy adverts in the major telecoms magazine in America, back page for a year. The other one had just taken out small ads inside the magazine. The company that had taken out the back page had blown all their marketing budget doing this for an entire year to run this. This was all they did. Okay. 5 years later, fast forward 5 years. 5 years later, the company that took the back page ad sold out on the stock market for over 350 million.
Wow.
And the company that took the internal ads didn't. And I thought, okay, right, now there's one thing reading an idea or hearing it from stage. It's another thing to go ahead and implement it, because it takes guts. Because suddenly, anyone relate to this? You're in a seminar and you get this great piece of information, great idea, and you think, do you know what, I can do that. And then what kind of happens is you get home and it's you, the computer, or it's you and your bank account and the investment in a piece of marketing or the investment in doing something, and we all get that inner doubt question. Is this really going to work for me? What if it doesn't? What if it does and I can't cope? All the kind of things we run through, and I was exactly the same. So I read this book, and I remember coming downstairs and sitting with Sue and saying to her, look, I want to spend our entire marketing budget on the inside cover of the biggest business magazine in Oxfordshire. And she said, you're crazy. That's it. That's all I'm at. That's the whole lot blown for marketing. And I went, yep, I know, but Harry Beckwith in this book says it's a really good idea. She's like, wow. You've never met this guy. And there's a really important lesson here, right? Okay, I said, no, I haven't. And this is right before, you could jump online and Google him and all that sort of stuff. All right, I said, but I've read his book, and it makes a lot of sense. And I trust him because he's read it, because he's got a book. Okay, so first of all, he was an expert in my mind because he had written something, because he'd published a book. He was a published author. I gave him a massive amount of credibility and trust. In fact, I trusted him with my entire marketing budget.
Wow.
Okay? All right?
Did you read the big disclaimer at the back of the book?
I don't even think there was one. To be honest with you, I wouldn't have cared. I just thought, listen, and here's an interesting thing. It's about implementing with belief, not just implementing, but with belief. So I remember ringing the company and saying, I want to buy the inside front cover for a year, and they told me how much it was, and I said, that's all the money I have. Okay, do it. And then hanging up the phone and feeling physically sick inside. Do you know that moment where you think, "Oh my God, what have I just got myself into?"
Yes, I had those moments, and I could fully relate.
Okay, so here's what happened, right? So what I decided to do with that cover was I decided to do two things, all right? And this is really important as well, okay? Firstly, I decided to live by, and I've always lived by the principle of give value first. Okay, it's part of what makes the Business Wealth Club such a different kind of community. When you come and visit, you get given a gift of a book straight away, just for turning up as a visitor, right? We don't ask for anything else. We just know that if you come and visit us, we want to thank you for even trying to come and see if whether we're worth, being a member of, whether we would work for you as a business. Just for turning up, we want to give you a thank you gift. Okay, that means you leave better off than when you walked in the room. And at that point, I decided that rather than write sales copy every month, I would do two things. I would give away my expertise. So I did do an offer on the page that said, I think it said 57 minutes of business coaching advice to grow your business, worth whatever it was worth back then. And I guarantee to find 3 ways to grow your business, or I'll do whatever I was going to do back then. I can't even remember the ad. And then I did that, and then I wrote an article that was value add. So it was all content. It was just giving away really great advice. Okay, that was all it was. But I did it for a year. Now, first of all, after about I remember the first issue coming out. Anyone ever had this experience? First issue came out, and I remember sitting there thinking, I feel physically sick because nobody's ringing in. And it took 3 months. It took 3 months before it really hit, right? And then after 3 months, people went, do you know what? This guy's been in this magazine for 3 months now. He's pretty serious. Okay, he must be some sort of an expert, or he wouldn't keep showing up. And then the phone started to ring. And then the phone started to ring, and then I started to get asked to speak at networking clubs and things like that. And basically, over the course of the next 6 months, my coaching business took off the back of that one ad. Okay, right?
That is an amazing, and it's really an interesting conversation, Paul, because we talked about it today when we had our coaching call, our team call, as you called it, in the end, when we talked about committing for the longer term. Remember that? And you're just giving me the 12-month number here that actually makes all the difference, because you stay for the duration.
But a couple of quick distinctions, if I can. All right.
Of
One,
course.
about the time you get bored with the advert is about the time the market finally figures it out. Okay, because about 6 months in, I was bored with it and decided to change it. And Sue turned around to me the month later and said, "Why haven't the phones rung this month?" And I went, "I don't know. I changed the ad." She went, "Change it
Uh-oh.
back." Okay, right. So right. That was just I'd got bored with it. Okay, and the market was just getting used to it. So we just ran the same ad for 2 years. Now here's what was interesting. Even after we took it off after 2 years because we no longer needed to keep running it. But when I would go networking, or when I would go, I'd turn up at the Business Wealth Club, or people who had never met me before would come up to me and say, "Oh, I've seen you in that magazine. I really enjoy your articles." And they were doing it up to 2 years after I'd stopped running the articles.
Wow.
2 years later. You want to talk about a lag time? That's 2 years worth of market penetration where I wasn't actively advertising that people still remembered me.
That's amazing.
Like, as an expert, what's that worth? Huge, right? Huge.
It's incredible, Paul, and that's what I've actually written down the word lag time, and underneath I've written something down. You said to me today, you said that you're never long enough there for them to find you, and I think this is such a classic because people think 3 months hasn't worked, I'd try something else. You haven't tried it long enough, okay? Because the market
I kind of
takes
like
time to accept it. That's incredible. That's
Do you know?
great.
I use the analogy. If I can, as an expert. Okay, if whether we're trying to be an expert in the business space or helping people with their personal lives, or we're helping families, whatever we're trying to do, whoever we're trying to help. Imagine that the people we're trying to help are in trouble and they're in a boat and they're on the sea. Okay, and what they're looking for is guidance. They're looking for the lighthouse. They're looking for you with your bright light of hope to shine out and people to be able to see it so they can navigate to you and get to you for help. That's what they're looking for. Now, if you are standing in one place, tall, strong, and you're saying, "Here I am, this is what I stand for, this is who I am, this is what I'm about," they can find you. If, however, you decide to keep running up and down the coast every 10 minutes to a different location, it is incredibly difficult to navigate to you.
And,
right?
and you're not addressing it just to me now, Paul, yeah? This is
No, this is to anyone. I don't know if it resonates for you, it resonates for you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I can hear you. It's just, it follows on from a conversation earlier. But this is these are gold nuggets, and I just want to quickly read a few of the questions out. One gentleman asked, how long is long enough? Because if you try something, is there a logical point when you got to give up and say, obviously it's not working? So is there any, from your experience, any timeline that you would say, this is long enough?
Great question. Okay, one of the biggest myths that holds people back, I think, is the phrase that says winners never quit and quitters never win. All right? And it's just not true. The reality is winners know what to quit and when to quit. Okay? All right? And there's a big distinction in that. And what I'll say is that with all marketing and advertising, you should be testing and measuring. So the time to get out is when you've tested and measured all the variants and you haven't got a result, then you go do something else. But you have to give things time enough to build up. There is that lag factor. So look at the cash flow and work it out.
So two indicators you mentioned earlier. When you get bored, that's normally when it starts hitting. Correct. So this is one maybe indicator. Although we all got different kind of boredom thresholds, as we also established. So, but generally, when you think, so literally give it longer than you would logically assume.
I think it depends on your cash flow position within the business. If you're running an ad that isn't getting any response at all, then you probably want to test changing the ad or changing the headline or doing something different, right? But if you've picked the right media, if you're in the right market and you're talking to the right people, it may just be that they haven't seen it long enough to get it.
Yeah, sorry, no, I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to add something to it when you finish your train of thought here. Because we've been promoting our event now for almost 2 months in different ways, different media, from text messages to sales letters to postcards to emails to telephone calls. And today one of our best clients, James, spoke to him, and he was oblivious and unaware that the event was next week, and we're thinking like, wait a minute, we did mention it, and somehow he managed to dodge the information, so it's incredible. You think they must have heard it by now, and that's another rule. We have to communicate more often and more clearly than we would naturally with your marketer, with your list. It's not like talking to your spouse where they're highly attentive, or should be, at least.
That's a whole other seminar. We haven't got time for that.
But, a different webinar, yeah, definitely.
Cool. So, can I? I mean, I just thought I'd share those kind of stories from personal experience about building,
Really, really good.
my coaching practice. And for me, that was the first kind of expert positioning piece I ever did. Then I went on to do a number of others, which I haven't got time to allude to now. I'm going to get to in more detail over the weekend. But
Mm,
what's that's the question often is, well, what's that resulted for me? Well, in hard numbers, I've been paid well over 1.5 million pounds of coaching fees in the last 7 years. I've worked with people like Porsche and Mercedes and BMW and Audi, which has been fantastic. I've worked with amazing people in the hair industry and Salon Success, their organisation, which is just a phenomenal organisation. And I've got to work with some incredible, millionaires and multimillionaires, and some incredible just startup type businesses as well. And I don't say any of that to impress people, but just to say, look, the wealth of opportunity to give back and make a difference. And that's why you want to be an expert. You want to be an expert because you want to make a difference to more people, and because you
mm.
come from a place of passion and you care about people. I've lost a business, Daniel. I know how hard when I lost everything, and I did lose everything at the age of 30. I know how hard it hurt.
Yeah,
I know how
I really
sick. I
want to
know
ask
how
you actually
sick it.
how. I want to actually ask a very personal question, if it's okay. It
Okay.
actually feels like it's just you and me talking. I'm almost unaware we got a couple hundred people listening in. It feels like just one of our coaching calls, our phone calls. But what is the biggest emotional lesson you took away from that time? I mean, it must have been very hard to pick yourself up
Mm.
in this pity party kind of attitude when you must have, because we're all kind of familiar with linear growth, however little the growth goes up or up and down. We're looking for improvement every year in our life and businesses. So after having had a very successful business you build up to 15 million, to lose everything, what was the emotional lesson you took from that?
Um, Emotional lesson. There were a number of different lessons, I think. Be careful who you position as an expert to get advice from would be one.
Mm,
I took an advice from somebody who really had no business. I should not have asked them for advice on where to invest my money. I
mm,
should have learnt the skills and the knowledge and the information to be able to choose where I invest my own knowledge, my own money. I,
interesting.
defer, I gave that responsibility to somebody else, and
Mm,
I completely abdicated it.
mm,
And that took a long time for me to accept that that was my responsibility and not his. I think
interesting.
that's one thing. I think the other thing for me, and the emotional lesson, was that um, when you really find out two things. I think there's a great quote from Roger Hamilton who says, wealth is what you have left when you lose all your money. True,
Mm,
absolutely true. It's also, you find out who your real friends are, and you find out what you're really made of. You find out
wow.
when it's you and the bedroom you grew up in as a kid, and your dreams in tatters on the floor, and everything you had that you thought was important to you, and you got to reevaluate. It makes you question what your life's purpose is about and why you're here. And it's not just about making money. Yeah, of course, we want to make money, but why? Why do you want to make money? Why do you want to be an expert? What's the dream? What's the bigger purpose for your life rather than just make money? Because to be honest with you, if that's what it is, then it's going to burn out when it gets tough. Because becoming an expert is a slog. You have to work at it. You have to be prepared to put in the hard yards. Read the books, get on the seminars, go to the planes, travel, whatever. It's
Mm.
effort, but what are you going to leave after your life? So,
I mean, I think that
that's
they're both incredible points. I mean, the true friends, because it is
yeah.
when you make more money, you suddenly have a lot of people want to be around you, and obviously when that money is gone and those people disappear, then they are not true friends. And I think the other lesson to take, to really have this accountability and just say, look, every decision I made has brought me to where I am today. And yes, this person might have given me advice, but it was my job to do my due diligence, and I didn't do that. So it's literally
And
facing up, isn't it? Holding the mirror damn close to the face, even if it's a bit
well,
uncomfortable.
yeah, I mean, it's personal responsibility. We are all personally responsible for our lives, the good, the bad. And for me, when I really understood that I'd created that mess in my life, I realized that if I could create the mess, I could create a much better outcome for my life.
Yeah, you could
And
unmess it.
that's yeah, yeah. But that's if I can create that, I can create something else. And it's also just understanding that I didn't, I hadn't mastered an area of my life that was finance. I hadn't
Yeah.
taken the time to learn it, and guess what? It called me out. Well, okay, so here's the good news: you can learn that skill. Okay, so go
Mm,
so go back and learn it. And that's, I think, kind of a critical piece for me in being an expert. The strategies to becoming an expert and can I just share a couple of things? Would that be all right? Have
Oh,
we got some time?
definitely,
Are we all right
definitely.
on
No, go
time?
for it.
How are we
No, we
doing?
definitely have time. Yeah, no,
Can,
I'm definitely right in it, so I'm very excited by what
okay.
you're sharing.
Can I jump forward a couple of slides because I've got some
Yeah,
slides that
go
I
for
want
it.
to just kind of bypass. Is that all right with everyone? So
Yeah, go
obviously,
for it.
today I'm CEO of the Business World Club and I run all that. I'm just going to skip this stuff for a second because I want to get to something that's really important to me. So look, I want to talk about the three main expert models for coaches, consultants, internet marketers, business owners, life coaches, whatever. Right? There are three ways you can become an expert, and this is kind of really important stuff. Right? For me, the first one is that you actually get results yourself, right? So if you're somebody who's got a track record of success, you can go out and talk about it. And that's fantastic because people will buy into who you are. If you built a very successful business and you made a lot of money in property or you made a lot of money in internet marketing, it's easier to position yourself as an expert. This held me back for years, and I'll tell you why. I refused, probably for the first 3 years of my coaching career, to talk about my failures. I wouldn't talk about them. I wouldn't talk about the fact that I'd lost a business. I wouldn't talk about the fact that I'd lost a marriage. I was embarrassed by my failures. I felt that I had to have it all nailed down and have it all correct to be able to talk about it. And it took funnily enough, I have a phrase, and this is something that's changed my life. People come into your life for one of three reasons: a reason, a season, or they're in it for life and they're best friends. Okay, a reason, a season, or for life. This man came into my life for no other. He came in and he had one purpose in life, and it was to teach me this lesson, and then he left. Never seen him since. Okay,
Wow.
and he talked to me about something, and I told him, and I remember privately have a cup of coffee revealing the loss of my business before, and he said, you have to tell that story from stage. And I said, I can't. Nobody's going to want to buy my coaching if I tell them about the fact that I was a failure. And he said, it makes you human. And I went, what do you mean it makes me human? He said, people who are struggling with businesses will understand that you get them. You've been there. You know what it's like. And I went, but that doesn't make any sense. It's counterintuitive. He said, well, I like you more just for the fact that you've told me that. And I went, wow, okay. And then we shook hands, left after that cup of coffee, never heard from him again, never bought anything from me. We never did business together. But that conversation changed my life because the next seminar I did, I stood up and I talked about my failures. And we had the best seminar we'd ever had with people going, do you know what, if you've been there and know what it's like, you can help me. And it was counterintuitive, right? So sometimes not getting results is not something that holds you back from becoming an expert. In fact, your failures may have taught you more because they're usually more painful than the successes that you've had, right? Okay, so that's one thing. Now, the other kind of experts that are out there is, they're people who get results for other people. They're people who are very good at getting results for clients, okay? So I'm much more comfortable talking about the fact that I've made my coaching clients, over 110 million pounds of profit since I coached them. I'm much more comfortable with how much, I've helped my franchisees and mentors of the Business Wealth Club grow their clubs and, what I've helped them do for their business. For me, that feels more comfortable. I like talking about other people's successes, right? And when I won an award for the results I've got for clients on a global basis and stuff, that for me, I was happier in that space than I was talking about who I am personally. Now, that's just where I started out from. I was happier to talk about that than I was about my own life. It took me a long time to get comfortable with talking about my own life. But if someone on this call is listening and you've got results for your clients, doesn't matter how big or small they are, they don't have to be life-changing results. They might just have been that you've got them an extra client using SEO. It might just have been that you've taken them from being stressed out to being in control. It could be anything, right? But if it was important to them, you want to talk about it because it will be important to someone else. Now, finally, and here's an interesting one, right? This is people who report on how others get their results. Okay, so think about this. I mean, I've used, if you like, I've used this strategy with the new book. It's not out yet, but when it comes out, Secrets of the Wealth Accelerators, I've gone to my network and said, okay, teach me or share with my audience what you're doing right now to make money in 33 different industries, markets, different strategies. What are you doing? Because these are guys like yourself that I respect hugely and that I go to and ask for advice. But I'm reporting on what they're doing. I'm not claiming that I know how to buy property. I'm not claiming that I'm the world's greatest internet marketer. Okay, I'm not claiming that I'm a webinar specialist because I'm not. But I've got people in my network who are, and I can go to them and say, hey, look, how would you feel about writing a chapter to be in this book so we can help more people right now? Because there's people out there who need our help. and together we can get to a lot more people.
Excellent, excellent example. And it's something you can do even if you are not an expert in the area, but just
Hmm.
collecting it or being the editor,
You
the
know the
way you
best
present
example
it.
of that? The best example in history of that, and I bet most people on this call will know this name, Napoleon Hill.
Mm,
Napoleon Hill was at college when he was hired, or I should say hired by Andrew Carnegie to write Think and Grow Rich. Right? Never got actually paid to write it, but he was hired to write Think and Grow Rich. And all he did was go around America for 20 odd years and interview very successful industrialists about what they'd done, what their strategies were, and then he compiled it into that book. In the process, he learned an awful lot, but he never was talking about his own success. He was talking about the people he'd interviewed. Sometimes that can be a really safe place for people to start pulling together other people or interviewing other people. I've done that. I started interviewing. One of the first products I created was an interview with one of the world's leading experts on how to manage, how to break through limiting beliefs.
wow.
That was one of my first products because
So
I rang him up. I said, "You've got this book. You're in the UK. Can I interview for an hour?" And he said, "Yeah, of course you can."
excellent. I mean, that's something that is an amazing strategy. And actually, while you've been sharing these amazing three expert models, we had some questions through, and somebody said, "Isn't interviewing a great way?" And
Yep.
absolutely. I mean, Paul and I
Yes,
have
it is.
interviewed countless people. I have old collections of interviews in property, in internet marketing. Many of them became products, standalone products, but what they have
Hmm.
also helped is position me as an expert, as an ally, and as a peer. So when you interview those people, people listen to that interview, will position you right next to the expert. In their mind, you and them are at the same level, and that is
Yeah.
a great way to get started, even if you don't have the expertise yet.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and here's a funny thing, right? I've even now when I was ringing everybody I know, say, hey, would you like to write a chapter for this book? I asked 34 people, and one person said no. 33
Wow.
people said yeah. In fact, 33 people didn't just say yes. They said, yeah, fantastic. What do you want? When do you want it by? How much do you want? How much content do you want? What do you want it, what do you want it on? And they could not be helpful enough. In fact, most people like yourself are recording their own chapter on audio for the audio version of the book. And they're like, yeah, great, I'll do that. And you know what? Sometimes we're almost afraid to ask people because we're worried that they'll say no, or we're worried that they're too busy.
Mm.
And it's
Actually,
just
that
interesting.
I also found what really helped was the how concise you were. You told me you wanted 1,500 words, and I had 3 days, and actually that really helped me. It was maybe a little bit more time would be useful, but it's just a clear deadline because it wasn't like this is gonna drag out for a year project. You said if you
Yeah.
get it done within a month, we have the book published. I'm like that is great because it's a clear, simple decision I can make. And I would have done it just to help you out, but of course there is some self-serving background in there, being multi-published in multiple publications, being able to have another book I can show on stage is, of course, highly valuable for me.
Of
It's
course,
great.
yeah. And we'll get it at the weekend. We'll get into some of that stuff about the expert publishing model. And I've published. I can absolutely say without hesitation that publishing my first book, self-publishing my first book, changed my business beyond recognition. In fact,
Mm.
one of the stories I'll tell at the weekend is how recently it's just secured me a £30,000 coaching contract with a corporate client, and I never even met them.
Wow.
I never even met them. They just read the book and rang up
They
and they
yeah, we still
just
say it. They met you in the book, but you
yeah.
didn't meet them. So that is one of the great leverage points of experts having videos out there using that sort of technology. I mean, books is hardly called technology, but it's a great kind of leverage point. Unbelievable.
But it's here's the thing, right? But the difference with a book is um, that we don't throw books away. I went through my garage at the weekend clearing some stuff out. I've got six or seven boxes of books that in reality I really probably am never likely to read again,
Mhm,
but I will not throw them out.
mhm.
It just goes against everything I've fundamentally been taught about knowledge and from school. School books are
Yeah.
valuable. I'm not going to throw it out. That would be, can't do that.
Mm.
So, my personal belief is that for experts, books are, and I know there's a number of people on the line who've already published and would agree with me on this. Books are books are the number one expert positioning marketing tool, providing,
Wow.
and there's a really big disclaimer here, providing it's a good book. Okay, because if you publish crap just for the sake of having a book, it will come back and it will absolutely destroy your reputation.
Mm.
Because once it's out there, you can't get it back.
It's also something you mentioned in a conversation we had some time ago when you said you only got one shot at your first book. Even
Yep.
if your second book's great, if your first book's not good, it's going to be doing you a lot of harm.
Yes.
So that is a really another good advice is make sure the book is actually in the area of your expertise. If you want to position yourself as an internet marketer, your book about your passion, how to the mating habits of the Australian bat is not going to help you very
Not
much in
really.
your
No.
expert positioning.
No.
But
No. I mean,
so you've done it very well. I mean, your SOS business book is literally many of your coaching strategies
yeah.
condensed in a book. You know.
Yeah, but I think you and I were both at the seminar with Michael Lozier, on law of attraction, and
Hmm.
here's a man. I mean, I actually went to him and asked him to coach me on my first book because I wanted to learn how to write a book, so I went to somebody and asked him, and I never thought he'd say yes. Honestly, never thought he'd say yes, but he said, yeah, okay, I'll coach you. So he coached me, and it was 4 sessions, and that was it. We were done, and and he said to me, listen, the first thing you should do with your book, even if you don't end up publishing the exact cover that you start with, but you want to get the cover created first, because
Hmm.
it puts it into reality that you're an expert. When you can see a cover on the wall staring at you, the desire to get it finished goes through the roof.
Hmm.
So, here's a man who just got, his second book was sold for well over $1 million. That's $1 million idea on this webinar about if you want to become an expert, get a book designed first, just get the cover designed, and for goodness sake, spend more money on it than you really feel comfortable spending. Because
And
a lot of people will
that's
do it for a lot less money. They'll do it for a couple $100. Don't do that, please. Just don't do that. Spend far more money than you feel comfortable spending on your book design.
There's another great part of that story when Michael said that he had the cover published. He could actually put that cover on the website and start collecting interest. And he had
Mm,
literally thousands of people that were waiting for the book to come out. And the moment the book was actually ready, he could shift thousands of copies on the first day.
yeah.
And he tells the story in a lot greater detail. But the fact that he had that cover for months before the book was ready allowed him to actually get pre-orders and create interest. And that's another
Yeah.
great advantage that he used to his for his
So
positioning.
one of the things I'm going to teach you the weekend, which I haven't got time to teach now, is the 3 sells that a book has to make to be successful. There are 3 things the book has to do to sell somebody on reading it, and I haven't got time to delve into them all here, but I'll do it at the weekend, okay? But I'll go through the 3 things that a book must do to be able to literally have people pick it up, go, that's brilliant, and I want to buy it. So for me, that's a kind of real detailed thing. I haven't got time now, but I want to dive in and do that perhaps at the weekend if we've got some time on stage.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, we give you all the time you need for that, Paul, because I know expert positioning is one of the topics people really look forward to. When we did a little survey of what people really want to learn, that seems to be just one of the hottest topics right now. And because you have done it for yourself and many of your coaching students and learned so much from other guys, I think you've got a very clear model and a clear path people can follow.
Cool. How are we doing on time?
Good stuff. Oh, it's already, believe it or not, it's 9 o'clock.
No,
Paul.
really?
So yeah, no, it is. Yeah, I know, and
I took
I
my
haven't
watch off just to be
I haven't
present,
even
so that's cool.
started my I haven't started my minutes line. So yeah, suddenly we got a big drop off in attendees when I mentioned it. No, no, that's really awesome. Actually, I want to ask a question to all the audience right now out there, and my question would be for you. Who else but me has just ordered Selling the Invisible on Amazon while Paul was talking? Can I just see if anybody out there, because okay, all right, two, see, yeah, 3, 4, 5 people have done it. What do you think, Paul? 5 people have actually bought the book while you were talking. And this is instant action takers, and I love
There you
that. I
go.
always do that
Good stuff.
when people like Paul mention a book. It's in my one click in my one click shopping order immediately. I love that. Well done, guys. I just wanted to have out of interest. I mean, it's no judgment on
No,
hey.
it's
There's
fun.
actually another 15 who've looked. I paid £3 including shipping for it. Can you believe it?
Wow.
The
Yeah.
book was 24 pence, and the rest was shipping. It's just unbelievable. Great stuff. Great stuff. Paul, I got a lot out of this call, and I can tell because we have still everybody, literally everybody who joined us an hour ago is still on the line. I know that people got a lot out of the webinar. I personally really enjoyed it. It felt very intimate. It felt like we're just having a chat, you and me, and they are as valuable as the chats that I and you actually often have, and I find it
Yep.
very, very beneficial. So people were
Well, I hope
listening
so.
in on a private chat, really. I quickly want to summarize a few things I got from the call. Spend 10% of what you earn in your education. The more you earn, the more expensive your education gets. It means you can get better and better and cooler stuff. If
Mm.
you're an expert, make sure you have a photo and a bio that you can use. Paul said that all the big important relationships he started actually in business at least happen at events, no
Yep.
doubt. And he shared the £5 million joint venture story that he built to a 486 employee company. He said that all of the big guys have focus, discipline, and are hungry for more information. That's what all the experts have in common. Um, and he also shared one of the key books, the first expert that he was inspired from, the Selling to the Invisible, that book I just
Yep.
bought. And one of the key things I got from your lessons was the lag time. Advertisers do things longer than you would generally feel it is necessary. And you shared this great story about the beach running up and down. You got to stay somewhere so people can find you, and that
Mm.
means in the market, with a brand, in a positioning, or in an advertising medium. So that's really, and one thing I loved about also your story about people come either in your life for a reason, for a season, or for life, and I found it
Mm.
very, very valuable because you're not questioning, you fall in one of those three categories. Either you learn one thing from them, or they're going to be there for a part of their life, or they're going to be really customers for life. So,
Yep.
Paul, I had a lot of fun, a lot of value out of
That's
it,
been
and
good.